Today we're going to work on evaluating expressions and evaluating functions. First one we're going to do is evaluating functions. Evaluate just means to solve, find the solution, simplify. All those words mean the same thing. You're looking at expression. An expression is a mathematical sentence that does not have an equal sign. So this one in front of us is an expression because this does not have an equal sign. We're looking at evaluating this expression for when x equals 1, and then again for when x equals -2. In order to evaluate an expression, all you do is replace the x's with whatever it equals. So if we're looking at x squared plus 8x, which we have in front of us, when we first evaluate it for x equals 1, we want to change all the x's to 1s. So as we read it, this first x becomes a 1, so I have 1 squared. And I'm always going to replace it in parentheses, just for safety's sake, and we don't get negatives and minus mixed up when we have negatives. And then I keep going through the expression. I have plus 8, and then I see another x, so I'm going to replace that with a 1. When you go to evaluate, you need to make sure you're following order of operations. So we're doing our PEMDAS. So first we look for parentheses. We do have parentheses, but there's nothing to do inside of them. There's no operations, so those are good. Then we need to do exponents. Exponents are little numbers that are up top, so we have one right here with 1 squared. 1 squared is 1, and I'm just going to write the rest of the equation. Now that I'm done with exponents, I go through and I look for multiplication and division. Remember, you're trying to do those at the same time as you read from left to right, just like you read a book. So if you see a multiplication or a division, you need to stop at the same time. So we see 8 times 1 right here, and that becomes 8. And now we're done with multiplication and division, and we're going to look for addition and subtraction. So we have, again, the same thing as we're going to look for them at the same time from left to right. And I have 1 plus 8, and that gives me 9. So that means when you evaluate the expression x squared plus 8x for x equaling 1, the answer is 9. Now let's look at it again for a different number. Let's evaluate it for when x equaled -2. So same thing, you're starting off the same, where anytime you see an x, you replace the -2 there. So we have -2 squared plus 8, and then I see another x, so I put a -2. Again, putting my number in parentheses just for clerical reasons. Okay, start off, PEMDAS. Let's start with our p's. Parentheses, we have parentheses but no operations, nothing to do inside the parentheses, so those are good. We move on to exponents. So we have -2 squared. Squaring something is multiplying it by itself. So -2 times -2. 2 times 2 is 4, and a negative is a positive, so that becomes +4. Write down the rest. Done with exponents, now we're going to look for multiplication and division. If I read from left to right, I have 8 times -2 right here. That's a multiplication because there's no sign in between them. So I bring down my 4 and plus, and 8 times -2. 8 times 2 is 16. A positive times a negative is a negative. Now that we're done with multiplication and division, we're going to move on to addition and subtraction. And the last thing we have left is 4 plus -16, which gives us -12. So if you evaluate the expression for x equals -2, you get a -12. Okay? Let's look at one more example today. We're going to evaluate the function. Again, evaluate means to solve, simplify, find the y value, find the solution, lots of things there. Okay, this time it's not an expression though, it's a function. And a function is just a fancy word for an equation. Often you graph functions, things like that. Also, functions will have this notation in the front. Commonly, you read this as f of x. If it was a different letter, if it was like a t, this would be t of y. It's just telling you the name of the function is f, and everything is in terms of x. Your variable, or what you're solving for, is terms of x. Okay? And when they ask you to evaluate the function, you're going to get things that look like this. F of 0. Okay? You'll notice that before there was an x in the parentheses, and now we have a 0 in the parentheses. So that means in our original equation, this guy, we're just going to change all the x's to zeros. So I'm going to rewrite that guy, changing all the x's to zeros. 4 plus 5, parenthesis, I see an x, I change it to a 0, minus 1. Okay. Again, order of operations. This time we have parentheses and we have something to do inside of it. So I have 4 plus 5. 0 minus 1 is a negative 1. Now I look for multiplication and division. Right between the 5 and the negative 1, I notice a multiply because there's no sign for us. So I rewrite everything else. And 5 times negative 1, 5 times 1 is 5. A positive times a negative is a negative. Last thing is addition and subtraction. 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. Okay? So just to write that clearly, f of 0, or the function at the value 0, the answer is negative 1. Let's look at another one. Let's do f of 1. Again, the x got replaced with a 1 in the parentheses right here. So that means anytime I see an x in the equation, I'm going to put a 1 there. 4 plus 5 times, oh, I see an x. I'm going to replace it with a 1. And now I get to solve it, starting with parentheses. 1 minus 1 is 0. Now I do my multiplication. I have 1 between that 5 and that 0 right there. 5 times 0 is 0. Now I do my addition. So that means f of 1 equals 4. Okay. I want you to try f of negative 2 on your own. Pause the video and then pause the video as you try f of negative 2 on your own. Alright, here's the solution with the work. I changed all my x's to negative 2's, went through my order of operations, and I get f of negative 2 should equal negative 1. No, I did that one wrong. This should have been a minus sign. Negative 2 minus 1, which right here gives me a negative 3, which right here gives me a negative 15, which right here gives me a negative 11. Sorry. F of negative 2 should equal negative 11. Okay? Hope this video helped you guys today, and good luck on your homework. Thanks for listening.